What is up, everybody? Happy to be here with you on the live broadcast, hanging out with you here in studio and having a good time doing so. Jacksonville Jaguars talk, folks, it's been a long time for me that since I've been able to sit here and talk with you about the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs. As you can see, ticking right here in the timeline, it's the first NFL playoff appearance for the Jacksonville Jaguars since the 2007-2008 season. And it's the first home NFL playoff game for the Jaguars. First time the Jaguars have hosted a playoff game since January of 2000 when they hosted the Tennessee Titans. And it wasn't even named Everbank Field back then. So, different sponsor, different everything with the Jaguars right now. And for the first time ever, they are the 2017 AFC South Division champs. They've never won the AFC South before. So as much as it's this season, they've never been divisional champions inside the AFC ever for the AFC South. So Jacksonville Jaguars, as you remember, there used to be different divisions. There used to be the North, there used to be the Central, this, that, and the other. And the Jaguars, believe it or not, were in a division that was pretty stacked and pretty vast before everything got mixed up here. And there was a split into 4 divisions on the AFC side and 4 on the NFC side, making the North, the South, the East, and the West on each side. And the Jaguars kept their games against the Indianapolis Colts and, of course, the Tennessee Titans and then the Houston Texans, who came in 2002. So Jacksonville, for the first time ever, winning the AFC South division. And we're here to discuss that right now. So there's a lot to be said about these Jaguars. I've proudly covered the Jacksonville Jaguars for the last 9 seasons on site throughout the years in Jacksonville, and I've covered them in my 14-plus years of broadcasting. They've been around for 23 seasons. This is their 23rd. Came in 1995-96, and I've been covering them all the way through that. And then as a professional broadcaster, I've been covering them for almost 15 years now, and then 9 years on site being able to go to the games and cover the team. So this year there's a lot of reasons why the Jaguars are good. You have heard a segment that I do every single week on the show. And the big thing about this segment, what means a lot to me about this segment, is that it's dedicated completely to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Typically, during the NFL season, when we're in full swing, on Tuesdays, because of Monday Night Football, on Tuesdays, I'll do On the Prowl, which is my Jacksonville Jaguars discussion, followed by NFL wall-to-wall coverage with all the other teams outside of the Jaguars. So you've become used to hearing this segment on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. This segment called On the Prowl, obviously On the Prowl because it being the Jacksonville Jaguars. And On the Prowl is a segment that I've been doing for a while on the show, and it is, like I said, complete Jacksonville Jaguars coverage. There's been interviews with numerous Jaguars over the years, so you've been able to hear from numerous players at different positions, from the defensive line, the offensive line, safeties, corners, wide receivers, running backs, kickers, punters, a little bit at quarterback, a little bit of everything. And On the Prowl, it has been something that I've been very happy to bring to you. So today's video is going to continue what you're used to hearing every Tuesday morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. And for those of you that haven't become a member yet, become a member on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. That's mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. And that show, Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, airs live every single Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I love how I said that show. That's my show. So Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, tune in every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And On the Prowl, this signature segment with my Jaguars coverage. Well, this season, what helped the Jaguars get to the playoffs? Well, these 4 men did a great job at helping this come along. Malik Jackson, who's in your top left of your screen, their defensive tackle. To the right of him, A.J. Boye, who is their corner coming from the Houston Texans. Malik Jackson came 2 seasons ago. This is his second season with Jacksonville. He came after winning a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. Let me try on the ring, and boy, was it pretty. We'll see if I can get that picture up for you in just a little bit. Underneath Malik Jackson, you'll see number 42, Barry Church. He came to the Jaguars after playing strong safety for the Dallas Cowboys and knows what it's like to be in the playoffs. And to the right of him is Calais Campbell, defensive end, coming to the Jaguars from the Arizona Cardinals. So you see the Broncos of the AFC West with Jackson. You see fellow AFC South with A.J. Boye of the Houston Texans. You see the NFC East with Barry Church. And you see the NFC West with Calais Campbell. And there's other guys like Tayshaun Gibson and company. But Jacksonville really worked on bolstering up the defense, the defensive line, the linebacker position, as well as the secondary. One of the guys you're not seeing on here is Telvin Smith, who they got through the draft from Florida State. Huge addition to the team. Paul Posluszny, who used to be a former Buffalo Bill, who is now a member of the Jaguars and has been for a while. The man, I always said that he wears, when you see Paul Posluszny with no shirt on and he's walking towards you in the locker room, it looks like a guy who is wearing the protective Kevlar armor of another like human torso on top of his torso. His neck is like set back. He literally looks like if you ever had an action figure where you could pull the legs and then the head like flips and there's this other body that comes out with armor and whatnot. That's Paul Posluszny. I mean, this man is massive. And Paul Posluszny, Telvin Smith, Miles Jack in the draft, all these additions have helped the team out, as well as bringing in these guys. Like I said, top left, Malik Jackson, under him, Barry Church. And then to the right of Barry, Calais Campbell, who looks like he's doing a golf swing. And above that, A.J. Boye. Big moves they made in free agency and in making trades to get vets on the team that can win these games and change the climate in Jacksonville. Another thing that they did was they went after these two guys, Keelan Cole and Jadon Mickens. Keelan Cole and Jadon Mickens, two guys who didn't know if they were going to have a job with Jacksonville this year, didn't know how much it would last, sleeping in cars, trying to find places to stay, not wanting to rent out an apartment and be caught in a lease in case they weren't going to make the team. These two gentlemen, Keelan Cole, the top that you see on the screen, and under him, Jadon Mickens. Keelan was the fourth-string wide receiver for Jacksonville this year. Jadon Mickens was the fifth-string punt returner wide receiver for the Jaguars this year. Number one punt returner throughout by the midpoint of the season on later on in the season, but a fifth-string wide receiver. Their number one wide receiver, Allen Robinson, went down with a torn ACL. Allen Hurns went down with an injury during the season and has since come back very recently. And Marquise Lee has been nursing an injury for the past few weeks and may or may not play in their upcoming playoff game. So that's 1, 2, and 3, respectively. Allen Robinson 1, Allen Hurns 2, Marquise Lee 3. Keelan Cole was the fourth-string receiver. Jadon Mickens was the fifth. And when you look at a quarterback and you say, well, you know what, they're not that good and they can't do this and they can't do that and they can't pull this off, I want to bring you to a screen where I'm very happy to show you this man. This is a guy who you think was not going to be the guy, right? People were saying, get rid of him. He's not worthy of being a quarterback in the NFL. He's not worthy of being the Jaguars quarterback. Blake Bortles. The team was 3-13 last year, and I can't tell you how many times I sat in Everbank Field and was on Twitter giving my thoughts during the game, you know, those live in-game thoughts, things that I noticed, things that I'm seeing, statistical things that are going on. And Blake Bortles was trending more than once, and not in a good way. People want to get rid of him. Fans were sick and tired of him. Why is Blake Bortles still the quarterback? Drop Blake Bortles. Trade Blake Bortles. Don't sign Blake Bortles back again. And that 3-13 team ended their regular season a season later in 2017-18 with a record of 10-6. So that quarterback that was so terrible and so grotesque and so awful that led the team to a 3-13 record in 2016-17 was too bad to get back, right? Except for the fact that when he came back, he went 10-6. Helped the team win 7 more games than they won last year. And yeah, it had to do with the defense. But when a quarterback can throw touchdowns to his fourth and fifth string receivers, his fourth, Keelan Cole on the top, and fifth, Jadon Mickens, he was making these guys look good and making free agency in fantasy football real good for you in the playoffs if you had an opportunity to pick up somebody off the waiver wire in free agency most likely both of these guys were in free agency. You picked them up. And the guy that wasn't good enough to be the quarterback, according to some, not me, ended up taking his fourth and fifth string receivers and turning this into a 10-6 team. Nate Hackett, the offensive coordinator of the Jacksonville Jaguars and friend of mine, made the statement to me that we have to remember the fact, and Nate Hackett and I had a very deep and extensive conversation on the show. You can see it by going to wakeupcalldt.com and clicking on the iTunes podcast, the app powered by Podbean, or the RSS feed. You can also go to wakeupcalldt.podbean.com directly, and you can search for the interview there. But Nate Hackett said to me, Blake Bortles has been a quarterback in the NFL for 4 seasons, including this season. This is 4th. He has had 3 different offenses in 4 seasons. 75% of the time, the man's being asked to change what he knows. So give the man a little slack, give him a little bit of credit, and let him go. And this year, boy, did he look better. If you look at the statistical numbers of the man that they call Blake Bortles, and we're going to do that right now, when you look at the statistics of Blake Bortles and what he's been able to bring forward for this team, he's done he's done a whole lot better this season than he did last season. I want to take a look at these numbers with you statistically. So we take a look at Blake Bortles from last year to this year, and it's easy to see how much better Blake Bortles has been doing when we look at his line from 2016-17 to 2017-18. He played in 16 games, all 16 games for the team in the regular season last year. He had a 58.9 completion percentage. This season, it's up to 60.2. Last season, he threw for 3,905 yards. This season, 3,687, so not too far off. Per pass, he's averaging 7.05 yards per pass per game, average per game. And it was 6.25 last season. He had 23 touchdowns to 16 interceptions last season. This season, 21 to 13. That number was a lot better before these last 2 weeks. Now, he wasn't asked to do too much this last week against Tennessee, and the game against San Francisco was very uncharacteristic, losing that game 44-33 where he made a bunch of mistakes. But Blake Bortles before that, and I want to go into the way that he looked in his game log before that. If you look at how he's played so far this season, and I'm going to go down the line, against Houston on the road in a victory, 1 touchdown, no picks. In the next game, a loss to Tennessee, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Backed that up by going to London, winning 44-7 with 4 touchdowns, no picks. Then 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and an overtime loss to the Jets. No touchdowns and an interception against Pittsburgh in that game where they won the game. Against the Rams, he had 1 touchdown, 1 pick, and a loss. Then he had 1 touchdown, no interceptions at Indy in a win. Against Cincinnati at home in a victory, 1 touchdown, no picks. Overtime victory at home against the Chargers, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. 1 touchdown, no interceptions at Cleveland in a victory. In a loss, he had 0 touchdowns, 1 interceptions at Arizona. And then he went 3 straight games with no interceptions. He had 7 touchdowns to no picks against Indy, Seattle, and Houston at home. Then he had 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions against San Fran on the road, and then 2 interceptions, no touchdowns against Tennessee. So 5 of those interceptions came really late in the season for him. Before that, he had 21 touchdowns to a mere, you look at what he was doing, it was 19 touchdowns to what he had at that point. It was 19 touchdowns to a mere 8 interceptions. And so obviously that number has drastically increased in the last few games, which some people are concerned about. But in all honesty, when I look at Blake Bortles and look at what he's done, that San Francisco loss, like I said, very uncharacteristic. But outside of that loss to San Francisco, in a tight game at the end of the season when they knew that they were going to the playoffs against the Tennessee Titans, he made, he made a couple mistakes. And down the stretch, he didn't get it done. But overall this season, the man looked a lot better than he had last year. And like I said, I don't think that the overall statistics from this season through 16 games adequately show it, because 5 of his interceptions came in week 16 and 17 combined. Before that, you're looking at a man that had 8 interceptions in 14 games. So, the job that he did this season in keeping those interceptions down was reputable. And he looks more comfortable when he's out there. He's not a guy that I feel like is holding on to the ball too much or too long. I think that he's getting it done out there. He's got a couple touchdowns on the ground already this season, and, try to get them into a game against Arizona where they were losing really late in the game. So for Blake Bortles, for a guy that people wanted to say was down and out, I understand that his statistics are not beautiful, but to have what he has right now, 21 touchdowns to 13 interceptions, is a lot better than, what people expected out of him this season and what they thought that they were going to get. And a guy that in the last 3 years has had no less than 3,600 yards passing. He's had 3,600, 3,900, 4,400 in the last 3 seasons, his best being 2015-16. And again, 3 different offenses in 4 years for the man out of UCF. First round pick, 3rd overall in 2014 by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And another thing that goes understated is his health and his longevity. He played 14 games as a rookie when they tried to put Chad Henne in the beginning. And then Blake Bortles has played all 16 games for each of the last 3 seasons, 2015, 16, 16, 17, and 17, 18. So a shout out to his longevity. One of the things making it easier this season is Mr. Leonard Fournette, his 1,000-yard workhorse. Now, if you remember, I said in the beginning of the season, Leonard Fournette could very well be the best thing when it comes to looking at a franchise back, the first franchise back that the Jaguars could boast of since the man that wore a number that was 1 higher, that's number 28, Fred Taylor. Fred Taylor, in his rookie season, was named Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he had over 1,000 yards rushing. This season, the man who I said had the best bet of being the next franchise back between Fred Taylor and nobody else for the Jaguars, Leonard Fournette, also attained 1,000 rushing yards so far this season. If we look at Leonard Fournette statistically for the team and where he stands so far this season and all the work that he has done, he has 1,040 yards on 268 attempts, just shy of 4 yards a carry. His longest run was 90 yards. He has 9 touchdowns this season. He's also caught 36 passes for 302 yards. His longest 28-yard reception. He has a touchdown. He has 2 fumbles this season. The big note on this is he's recovered both of them. So he has not lost either one of the 2 fumbles that he had. So big ups to him. Him or the team has recovered those fumbles. So Leonard Fournette, a big help to the Jaguars this season. Another help to the Jaguars is a guy that was entrenched with the team, and this was kind of an interesting placement. A couple seasons ago, with Gus Bradley being the head coach and Greg Olson being the offensive coordinator, there was a move made by the Jaguars to bring Doug Marrone and Nate Hackett to the Jaguars and put them both on the staff. Doug Marrone being the assistant head coach, and everybody's an assistant head coach. He was the offensive line coach, but he was the only coach in the nation of 32 NFL teams that had the asterisk next to his name, assistant head coach. And that told me something. Coach in waiting, coach in case Gus Bradley screws up, and why Nate Hackett was able to come as the quarterback's coach didn't make any sense to me. It was great for these guys, but not great for Gus Bradley and company, because you have to think about the fact of the matter. You got a guy who was a head coach in Buffalo in Doug Marrone, and Nate Hackett, who was the OC for Doug at Syracuse, where they built this offense. They built this offense at Syracuse, which was a mixture of a few different schemes in the NFL. I think it was 3 different schemes, Nate Hackett told me. And so they got to know each other and built this offense in Syracuse. Then they left Syracuse and went to Buffalo. Doug Marrone got the head coaching job with the Bills, and he moved forward and took Nate with him and most of the staff from Syracuse. Well, out of all the staff from Syracuse going to Buffalo with him, the man that he was most loyal to was Nate Hackett. And when Jacksonville came calling, Now, Doug Marrone, mind you, remember he opted out of his year with the Buffalo Bills on the contract. He could have stayed another year. They were changing over ownership. They were changing over what things were going to look like. They were changing over the front office. And essentially, there was 5 jobs open. Doug thought he had a good shot. There was a bunch of jobs out there, the Cleveland Browns, the New York Jets, the Oakland Raiders, and so on and so forth. And then when Jack Del Rio was hired as the Oakland Raiders head coach, after going 68-71 with the Jaguars, literally a guy that rode the equator of the NFL, I thought to myself, Doug, this wasn't your year. If they're hiring Jack Del Rio over you with a record of 68-71 and not much to show in Jacksonville for postseason play or strong records consistently, it's not your year. Doug rolled the dice, didn't end up working out for him, goes down to Jacksonville. But did it really not work out for him? I don't think so. Because Doug Marrone got to go down, like I said, to Jacksonville a couple seasons ago with his offensive coordinator, Nate Hackett. And going down to Jacksonville as a head coach in the NFL with your right-hand man, your offensive coordinator, there's already a head coach and an OC in Jacksonville when they hire Doug Marrone and Nate Hackett, who are a head coach and an OC. So you got 2 head coaches and 2 OCs on the same team, which made me believe that if Gus Bradley screwed up and the team wanted to move forward, the interim head coach was already there. And I put that out there for you all when Gus Bradley was fired during the season. I said, welcome to your interim head coach. The writing was on the wall. And when people were saying Chip Kelly was going to be hired, this, that, and the other, I knew better. From covering both of these guys in Syracuse, why would Doug Marrone get rid of the guy that he created his offense with, that knows it better than anybody and obviously works with him better than anybody, that he can trust more than anybody with the offense? Nate Hackett. So Doug Marrone takes over as the head coach of the team. And before that happened, Nate Hackett took over for a fired Greg Olson in the middle of the season as the OC interim. When Doug Marrone was named the official head coach, guess who stayed OC? Another good move by the Jaguars was keeping Todd Wash, their defensive coordinator, who was given the job after being with Jacksonville in the capacity of being the defensive line coach in 2013-14 and the defensive line coach / run game coordinator in the season to follow. After that, he was given the opportunity by Gus Bradley to be the defensive coordinator. And becoming the defensive coordinator of the Jaguars, people, I think, overlooked the Jaguars last season because their defense had done some very good things. And with everything that their defense was able to do, when Doug Marrone took over, he did this crazy thing, which was keep Todd Wash, who was the defensive coordinator under the other head coach. But you got to remember, Doug Marrone had worked within the same building as Todd Wash, and so did Nate Hackett for a couple seasons while they waited and bided their time. So it's not that they didn't know Todd Wash, and even though he wasn't necessarily their guy, it made sense to keep him there. It made sense to keep him part of the team. And with Todd Wash staying with Doug Marrone in Doug's first season as head coach, this season of 2017-18, Jacksonville's defense is ranked second out of 32 NFL teams in yards allowed per game with 286.1, behind only Minnesota, who allows 275.9. Passing yards a game allowed, Jacksonville is first in the country. One of the most glaring issues that the Jaguars had, and even Doug Marrone had when he was at Syracuse, was with the secondary. And the additions of guys like A.J. Boye and Barry Church and then Jalen Ramsey in the draft. Look at what this team has done. They lead the nation of 32 NFL teams in passing yards allowed per game with 169.9. In rushing yards allowed per game, Jacksonville has some work to do. They're 21st in the nation out of 32, but they're allowing just a little over 100 rushing yards a game. Points per game, Jaguars are second in the nation, only to Minnesota, Minnesota allows 15.8 points per game to opposing offenses. The Jaguars allow 16.8 a game, second lowest total in the nation. Defensively, the Jaguars have allowed the least amount of first downs against them with 257 this season. The Jacksonville Jaguars, when you look at against the pass, like I said, what they've been able to allow so far this season, the Jaguars have 21 interceptions this year. 21 interceptions. Second to only the Baltimore Ravens out of 32 teams. The Jaguars are second only to the Steelers by 1 in sacks this season with 55 sacks. The Jaguars had 33 sacks through 16 games last year. This year they had 33 at the beginning of the season, and they added 22, almost doubling their sack total from last year. So give credit where credit is due, and kudos to Doug Marrone for keeping Todd Wash on the staff. Then there's this other guy, and my final note on the Jaguars this year, in this On the Prowl Jaguars talk brought to you by Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. This guy came back. Tommy C. T. Cough. T. Get Busy is what I want to call him. Tom Coughlin coming back to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tom Coughlin, somebody who was the coach of the Jaguars back in the day. Somebody who the Jacksonville Jaguars have missed from the day that he left. He was the first coach ever of the Jaguars in 1995-96 at the ripe age of 49. The Jacksonville Jaguars went 4-12 in his first season and then proceeded to go 9-7, 11-5, 11-5 again, and 14-2 in 1999-2000. And in that season was the last time that they hosted a playoff game at their stadium. So think about this. Tom Coughlin was with the Jaguars the last time they hosted a home playoff game. And the first season he comes back, they host a home playoff game. I'm just saying. Pretty awesome. His last 3 seasons in Jacksonville, they went 7-9, 6-10, and 6-10. And he was allowed to go see other people, so to speak. He moved on to the Giants and was the head coach of the Giants for numerous years. 12 seasons. Hard to believe it. I feel like it was just yesterday he left Jacksonville. But for the last 12 years, he's been with the Giants. All the way up to 2015-16. And ironically, his last 3 years with the Giants were 7-9, 6-10, and 6-10. The exact same as his last 3 years with Jacksonville. But while he was with the Giants, they did something called win the Super Bowl. They were a 9-7 team in 2011-12, went to the Super Bowl and took down the mighty Patriots. In 2007-08, they were 10-6 and took down the New England Patriots, who were Super Bowl champions. He leaves Jacksonville, and just 4 seasons after leaving Jacksonville, he wins a Super Bowl, and then 4 years after that, he does it again. Well, the Jaguars brought him back home hoping that he can do some good for this team. The former Syracuse, that's right, Syracuse fullback, Tom Coughlin, who used to eat at my family's food trucks and my grandfather and great-grandfather, the Ralph James truck, which was called the Dingle Man because they used to ring the bell and the players would run out. They fed Tom Coughlin, Floyd Little, John Mackey, Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Roosevelt Bowie, Dale Shackelford, Louis Orr, everybody. All these guys. Some of the greatest basketball and football players ever in the history of Syracuse were fed by the Ralph James food truck. So to my grandfather and my great-grandpa in heaven, kudos to you and God bless you. And thank you for being a part of Syracuse history and the fabric of sports in the United States. Well, Tom Coughlin, who knows all about the Ralph James truck and going out there and being a part of that, he's fond of his time at Syracuse, fond of the moments that he had. He's drafted a bunch of Syracuse players. When he was with the New York Giants, he took Ryan Nassib, he took Jay Bromley, he took Justin Pugh. And now moving forward to the Jaguars and coming back home again in his 70s, the hope is that that thing you're seeing on this photo sitting next to him could come to Jacksonville. Because who would have thought the Giants were going to win a Super Bowl, A? B, who would have thought the Giants were going to win a Super Bowl in years that they went 10-6 and 9-7? Yet they did. And in the first season that Tom Coughlin returns to Jacksonville, they go from 3-13 to 10-6. So there's a lot of credit to be handed out. Credit to this man, Blake Bortles, keeping him as their quarterback, which I agreed with. Credit to drafting a strong, burly, downhill runner in Leonard Fournette. Kudos to the moves that they made to bring in vets. Kudos to believing in guys that weren't household names. Kudos to the rookies that they drafted. Kudos to getting Doug and entrenching him and having him ready to be the interim head coach and then make him the head coach. And kudos to Doug for keeping Nate Hackett and that offense. And Todd Wash and that hell of a defense. And bringing this man home. On the Prowl has taken us into the playoffs thanks to all of those pieces coming together. And I will be on the Prowl with you throughout the playoffs. As long as Jacksonville is in it, I'll be doing the playoffs no matter what for Wake Up Call. But on the Prowl, as long as these divisional champions, first time ever AFC South division champions, I'll be covering them all the way through. So make sure that you become a member on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt and listen Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time to Wake Up Call. On the Prowl will be on there as well. Make sure that you're here with me on Facebook Live and on Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, on Twitter at Call DT, on Instagram at wakeupcall_DT, and always on wakeupcalldt.com, where you will find over 800 shows right there on the RSS feed, the iTunes podcast, and the downloadable app powered by Podbean. Thank you to each and every single one of you as we continue on the Prowl with the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs for the first time in a decade and first home playoff game since the last time Tom Coughlin was in the building. God bless. I'll talk with you soon, and be well.